Okay, let's unpack this, because the world of publishing and Hollywood, wow, they just delivered something pretty wild.
Yeah, it's definitely a story. We're talking big money.
Huge money being thrown at a story that, let's be honest, started as really explicit fan fiction.
Based on very beloved established characters.
Right. And the kicker, it landed this massive Hollywood deal, we're talking 7 figures, before the official book version is even out.
It's kind of staggering. And the deal itself, you mentioned 7 figures. Some reports say upwards of $3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah. And it's more than just, a nice payday for the author.
Yeah.
It feels like a big flashing green light for a whole business model.
Exactly. And our sources today, well, they offer an extremely critical take on this whole thing.
Very critical. Looking hard at this genre, often called romantasy or maybe dark romance, and arguing that its dominance points to a real crisis.
A crisis in reading habits and artistic standards, too.
That's the argument presented. Yeah. That this whole trend is lowering the bar, basically.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, exploring the really sharp viewpoint on this romantasy revolution. We're zeroing in on the economics, how the illicit fan work become blockbuster guaranteed.
And the specific case that really kicked this all off is that news about Legendary Entertainment.
Right, snapping up the film rights for a book called Alchemized.
And to get why it's so controversial right off the bat, you need the origins.
It began deep in the Harry Potter fandom as fan fiction.
Highly inflammatory fan fiction, yeah. Focusing on what one source pretty bluntly called a degenerate Hermione hooking up with Draco Malfoy sort of thing.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Draco and Hermione, that pairing itself, already fraught, given...
Exactly. The original dynamic is pure ideological conflict, right? Antagonism. And this fan fiction takes that and twists into something explicit, sometimes pretty dark.
So the immediate content, according to these sources, is the original material itself.
Yes, they don't mince words. They call it disgust pornography. That really sets the tone for the whole critique we're looking at.
They're basically saying it's not literature, it's just commercialized.
That's the core argument, yeah.
Which brings us right to the mechanics of how you get from fanfic to film. Section 1, the blueprint. From fanfic to franchise gold.
Okay, so the first step, legally, when a publisher and a studio decide to pour millions into something like Alchemized, is what the sources cynically call
filing the serial numbers off.
Exactly. That phrase is key. It's jargon for stripping out all the specific copyrighted stuff so the new work can legally stand on its own.
So for Alchemized, that means removing the obvious Harry Potter ref, Hogwarts, spells, stuff like that.
Right. Locations, specific terms, and crucially, the name. Hermione becomes Helena, for instance.
But the source is really skeptical about this. They don't see it as a real translation.
Not at all. The critique is that it's just surface change, window dressing to avoid loss.
They argue the core appeal, the character types, the bad boy captive dynamic, specific chemistry that got millions of clicks online that all stayed.
Completely intact. According to this view. So different names, maybe, but the studio and publisher are still cashing in on the power of the original IP, the original fandom.
And this isn't just theory. There's a massive precedent for this exact model.
Oh, yeah. The giant shadow looming over all of this is 50 Shades of Grey.
Right. The sources point to that again and again as the original test.
If you trace it back, that whole phenomenon which just dominated publishing for years.
Totally. It started as explicit Twilight fan.
With Bella and Edward.
Do you remember the fanfic title? Master of the Universe?
That's the one. And the author's pen name was apparently something like, what was it the source said? Ice Queen Snow Dragon.
That was something like that, yeah. Which just shows how deep in the fan culture it was, right? Very online, very niche.
And that origin matters because, as the sources see it, 50 Shades proved something huge to the industry.
That porn sells.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And not just a little. It sold, as the source put it, 1 gillion copies. Movies made huge money.
It showed that if you have that built-in fan volume,
it translates directly to commercial success. It validated the whole approach, proved the blueprint works.
So if 50 Shades was the proof of concept,
then Alchemized is like the current, maybe even supercharged version, the market acceleration.
And the numbers, even before the official launch, they really show why Hollywood opened the check.
They're pretty staggering. You look at Amazon, Alchemized is already the #1 new release in romantic fantasy before it's even technically out.
#1. Wow.
I get this number 80 in all books on Amazon.
All books. So it's selling thousands already.
Thousands. Just based on pre-orders and buzz from that original fan community. That kind of instant velocity, that built-in excitement.
That's the dream for traditional publishing, isn't it?
Absolutely. They spend millions trying to generate that kind of heat.
Okay, so let's really dig into the business logic here. Why pay up to $3 million for an unpublished book, say controversial origins?
It comes down to, well, risk mitigation and guaranteed profit calculation.
Hollywood hates risk, especially with big movie budgets.
Exactly. The biggest gamble is launching something cold with no proven audience.
But here,
the audience isn't just known, they're hyper-engaged, they're organized. They've already shown they'll consume this stuff obsessively in multiple formats: fanfic, book, movie ticket.
so the studio is essentially getting free market research done by the fans themselves.
Pretty much. They've proven the demand, the willingness to pay, the dedication. The studio doesn't need focus group. The fandom is the focus group.
And that certainty, that guaranteed audience, that's what our sources say is leading studios to ditch traditional quality standards.
That's the argument, that the money is just too easy, too guaranteed to pass up, regardless of the content.
Which is a perfect bridge, actually. If the economics make sense, what about the content itself? What's the cultural cost?
Right. And that brings us to section 2, the critique of content and the idea of a cultural crisis.
So the source material, it lays out this very cynical formula it believes publishers and Hollywood are rewarding.
Yeah, a 4-step process, basically, for turning beloved IP into this specific kind of hit.
Step 1.
Take an existing beloved character. Leverage that built-in recognition and affection. You get the fandom for free.
Okay, step 2.
Strip away everything that made them appealing. So remove the morals, the complexity, maybe the heroism.
And replace it with?
Just raw attraction, maybe power dynamic, primal stuff.
Got it. Step 3 is where it gets
Right. Source says, insert graphic sexual scenarios that would make a sailor blush. That's the hook, the element driving the online engagement.
And the final step, step 4. This feels like the most cynical part of the...
It is. The claim is that publishers then market this literary sewage as empowering female fantasy.
Oof. So sanitize it, give it a progressive spin while counting the money.
That's the accusation, that the empowerment angle is just marketing cover for exploitation.
It's a really harsh indictment of the industry, painting them as just, well, opportunists.
Complete. But the critique goes deeper than just business ethic. The source brings in an analysis from EV magazine.
Right, I saw that reference. And this escalates things quite a bit, doesn't it? From a market critique to something about psychology.
Yeah, it delves into some really controversial claims about the impact on readers, specifically looking at monster smut and similar dark romance genres.
Okay, tread carefully here. What's the core claim from EV Magazine as cited by the source?
The central assertion, and again this is from the source citing the magazine, is that women are potentially conditioning their brains and bodies to associate pleasure with monsters, slavery, or sexual violence through reading this material.
Wow, that's a heavy claim. Associating pleasure with violence or non...
It's a powerful assertion, yeah. The idea that consumption isn't passive, that it actively shapes desires.
And the mechanism they propose, how does this conditioning supposedly happen?
It relates to how fantasy and arousal work. The magazine apparently argued something like, what you repeatedly fantasize about becomes necessary for arousal.
Okay, I see the logic trail they're building. So if the fantasy diet is constantly centered on
abuse, monstrous violence, and submission to non-human entities,
then the brain, according to this argument, starts to crave that stimulus. It gets reprogrammed.
That's the word, reprogramming, implying it's not just escapism, but potentially shifting what someone finds necessary for arousal or
That's a profound allegation. We absolutely need to stress this is the source's highly critical spec, using very strong language about negative effects.
Definitely. And it's important to note the source seems surprised that EV Mag is perhaps not a mainstream outlet, was the one making these claims so forcefully.
Contrasting it with, say, the New York Times.
Exactly. The source points out that while EV is issuing these warnings, the NYT had a piece celebrating the trend, asking why magic dragons and explicit sex are in bookstores everywhere, framing it as popular, maybe even empowering, for a new generation.
So you have this clear divide. Is it female agency and fantasy exploration, or is it, as the critics claim, market-driven exploitation leading to negative conditions?
That's the fault line. The NYT seems to validate the reader's genuine enjoyment and choice, while the critical sources focus almost entirely on the potential harm.
And to really understand the depth of this fan culture, how completely absorbing it can be, we need to look at a specific example.
Right. The case study highlighted in that NYT article, which the source then uses to illustrate the extremes of this fan obsession. This takes us into section 3.
The manacled case, and we are deep in Dromione territory. Now, that's the Draco-Hermione pairing.
Yes. The NYT focused on Simona Stallone, 28, real estate agent, content creator in Toronto. She's kind of the target demographic. Grew up with Potter, found adult fanfic later.
And the story that gripped her was manacled?
Right. And the setup is pure dark fantasy AU alternate universe. Harry's dead, Voldemort won.
Okay. Bleak starting.
Very perfect for that morally ambiguous, illicit romance vibe, which, again, the source just calls porn.
And the dynamic, Draco.
He's reimagined as a vicious executioner for Voldemort, and Hermione is his prisoner of war, held captive.
Intense power imbalance there.
Deliberately so. The fanfic authors took the familiar characters, made them, quote, a little older and a little hotter put them in decidedly more adult scenarios.
And Miss Stallone's reaction, she called it.
Delicious. That was her word.
Okay. And this leads to the core of the critique about obsession.
Yeah. She said she was fully consumed by it.
No.
But the quote that the source really seized on, the one they see as demonstrating the sickness of it,
was the before and after quote.
Exactly. She said, I define my life as before and after manacled.
Wow. That's putting a piece of fan fiction on the level of a major life event. Or like BCAD.
It suggests an incredible level of personal investment and impact. Not just a book she enjoyed, but something that fundamentally shifted her perspective, apparently.
And this obsession wasn't just internal, right? It became visible.
Yeah, tangible evidence. She got tattoos inspired by the book.
Tattoos? Of what?
A constellation from the story on her shoulder. A hummingbird on her ankle, integrating the fan work right onto her body, into her identity.
That's commitment. It really backs up the source's point about deep immersion.
And then look at her reading habit. This is where the conditioning argument resurfaces.
She reread it multiple times, the long book.
Huge. 800 pages, reread it half a dozen times. But even that wasn't enough. She listened to fan-made audio recordings.
Okay.
On triple speed.
Triple speed? Why?
Her reason, to get to the best parts faster.
Wow. Okay, so not savoring the prose or the buildup.
More like racing to the climax, the high points of emotion or likely sex, which you can see how the source connects that behavior to the idea of conditioning for specific intense stimuli.
Skipping the context to get the hit. Yeah, I see the connection they're making.
And it's social, too. Her friends didn't judge. They leaned in. They gave her a huge 3-volume bound edition of Manacled for her birthday.
A bound edition of fanfic.
Signed by the fan author. And she started a book club dedicated just to Manacled. It shows a whole supportive ecosystem built around this one piece of derivative work.
Which brings us to the platform where a lot of this originates, Archive of Our Own, AO3.
Right. The source calls it notorious for hosting the most extreme sexual content imaginable. But the key is how it facilitates
the tagging system.
Exactly. Users tag stories with incredibly specific kinks and fetish. The source argues this creates echo chambers.
So?
Well, if you can filter for, say, enemies to lovers, plus captivity, plus dark themes, plus non-con or whatever, you find exactly what you're looking for. And you find a community that shares and validates that specific.
So the platform's structure helps normalize and even maybe escalate niche or extreme tastes?
That's the critique, that these echo chambers make progressively more disturbing fantasies seem normal within that group. And that highly specific validated demand created there.
That's what Hollywood is now paying millions for, access to that pre-built, hyper-specific audience.
Precise. They're buying the loyalty nurtured in the AO3 tags.
Okay, which leads us perfectly into the final Section 4, Market Domination and the Future of Fantasy.
Where the source really broadens the argument. It's not just one deal, it's the whole genre landscape. The claim is Romantasy now dominates all of the bookstore stands.
Like literally dominate, pushing other stuff out.
That's the feeling they convey. That if you walk into a bookstore looking for what they call real fantasy, Lord of the Rings, high fantasy.
Good luck finding it.
Yeah, amidst the sea of Romantasy covers, they specifically name authors like Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros as driving this dominance.
And the argument is that their published work is essentially the same stuff as the controversial fan thematically.
The source suggests a strong similarity.
Yeah.
That this specific blend of romance and explicit content has become the dominant mode in published fantasy.
And it's even changed genre labels, like dark fantasy.
Right. The source points out, you search dark fantasy online expecting maybe grimdark battles or complex worlds.
And instead you get
what they call creepy pornography books aimed at women. A total shift in what the genre labels signify, prioritizing the explicit romance over traditional fantasy plot.
Okay, so this brings us back full circle to the big money. The Alchemized deal, potentially $3 million.
The source sees that as the final nail in the coffin. Hollywood's complete abandonment of any artistic standards.
Driven purely by
guaranteed profit. The studio knows the audience exists, knows they're rabid, knows they'll show up. It's seen as a safe bet.
So this massive financial validation, it effectively endorses what the source calls pornographic reading habit, regardless of quality or impact.
That's the bitter conclusion they draw, that the money validates the model, which encourages more of the same, creating this feedback loop.
Publishers reward the fanfic, Hollywood rewards the publisher, the audience girders.
Exactly. A cycle driven by risk aversion and guaranteed return, potentially at the expense of artistic quality or cultural well-being, according to this critique.
Which naturally leads the source to propose an alternative. They can't just critique, they have to offer something.
Right. They advocate for what they call clean fantasy.
A direct counter-movement. The source author even says, we need to rebuild up real fantasy.
And promotes their own work as an example. The Adventures of Baron von Mondley series.
Described as
clean, good, airship swashbuckling focused on action. Basically, everything the current romantasy trend isn't in their view. No explicit content, traditional adventure focus.
And they claim some success even without Hollywood backing.
Yeah, the author mentions selling over 30,000 copies, which is respectable, demonstrating an audience exists for this kind of story, even if it's not getting the seven-figure movie deals right.
Interesting. So there is a market, just maybe not the sum scale of market.
Seems that way. And the source ends with a bit of future gazing, looking at technology.
Ah, the AI angle.
Yeah. The author hopes AI tools might eventually let independent creators like them make their own movie, bypass Hollywood entirely.
A tech-fueled rebellion to crush the current trend and bring back good, clean fantasy.
That's the vision, using AI to disrupt the current system and restore what they see as traditional genre value, corrupted by commercial.
It really captures the core tension, doesn't it? Mass market, fan-validated content versus a vision of genre purity and artistic tradition.
Absolutely. That's the heart of the conflict.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, we've really explored two key sides presented by these critical. First, this powerful, profitable engine, turning fanfic into guaranteed hits by leveraging that built-in audience for mass.
And second, the incredibly sharp cultural and psychological critique arguing this content is harmful, reflecting an abandonment of artistic standards for easy money.
Right, and it's systemic, isn't it? The fan platforms like AO3, the publishers, Hollywood, they're all interconnected in fueling this trend.
Yeah, it's an entire ecosystem reinforcing itself. It's not just one book. It signifies a potentially fundamental shift in how stories are made, valued, and sold now.
So we've seen just how potent this specific fan enthusiasm can be. If a story's financial success, guaranteed return, is proven before it even hits shelves, just based on an online community, what does that signal for the future?
Yeah, what about truly original stories? Stuff that doesn't come with a prepackaged, ready-to-buy fandom.
Is generating that pre-validated market now just inherently more valuable to the industry than, say, traditional notions of artistic merit or originality?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the $3 million question now. Where do we, as creators, publishers, consumers, draw that line between market certainty and creative integrity in a data-driven world?
Something to think about next time you see one of those magic dragon and explicit sex book covers dominating the bestseller. Thanks for diving deep with us.